we're Summon Stories here at Gen Con 2023. Today we're here, Spencer Campbell, who is the founder of GilaRPGs.
Yeah, I guess so.
The IDGN award-winning game designer and publisher, creator of the Lumen system, games like Light, Nova, Drifters, which is really cool. We're in costume for Drifters.
I love the Drifters reference.
That was when I first found you. Now Hunt, Reap coming up, all sorts of stuff. And we're gonna get into, who knows, all of it, none of it. But first, we're gonna figure you out a little bit. So we're Summon Stories. And we like to ask everyone, if someone were to summon you, they have their ritual circle, they've done all the proper runes, all we need is a few items if we want Spencer Campbell here. What 3 items is someone gonna pick if they wanna summon you?
Okay, that might be one of my favorite questions I've ever been asked. That's really good. Coffee, you absolutely need coffee, 100%. There has to be just black coffee. If I have it my way, it's an Ethiopian pour over, to be specific.
Okay.
That will summon me. There has to be a crow there, or a raven of some kind, because I'm obsessed with corvids, so that. And then just to really keep the alliteration going, my dog Clover needs to be there. So coffee, crow, Clover, that will summon me.
That sounds like a real ritual. If it doesn't summon you, something's coming through.
Pretty much everything that I need is right there. So yeah, I would do that.
Awesome. All right, so now that we know that, I want to get into what before we get into the nitty gritty, what's motivated you to sort of, you not only take the idea of this would be a cool game to actually I'm going to make this game, and you've taken it further where actually I'm going to make my own system, and actually I'm going to make my own company to put these games with these systems out. So what's the thought process behind that?
Well, my parents have said that I've always been a rules person since I was like a kid. Like we would play games and then I would change the rules and stuff. So like it's already been like in my brain for forever. And my buddy Mike, who I'm here with, we love board games, and for a while we tried making board games, and it turns out that's super complicated with all like the pieces and everything. But we love playing role-playing games. And it was honestly at the start of the pandemic where suddenly we had a lot of time on our hands, and I was like, what if I just tried writing one of these things? And I wrote Score, and it went well, and I had fun with it, and then just like, I don't know, something unlocked in my brain, and now I literally can't stop it. I can't turn it off. And so that is just the motivation, is just the voice that's screaming in my head, like, you need to get this on the page, you need to get this on the page. And so that's why things like Hunt, like, that got written in like 72 hours, because it was just like, I need to get this out of my head so that I can sleep at night. And that's my big motivator, is sleep in peace.
So it's a passion is also almost a curse, I'm hearing, that you actually can't function unless these ideas are out there.
I talked to a lot of my indie friends, and they're very similar, where it's like, you get into this mode where like, if you're not writing, you start to feel a little anxious. You're like, you get a little itchy, and you're like, I should be designing something. I should be working on something right now. And yeah, it is a little bit of a curse, but then at the same time, it does let me just suddenly like word vomit onto the page, and then something magically happens. So
there you go. So if those symptoms sound familiar, you might be a TTRPG writer. Yeah. Don't worry. So part of that, and talking about something I really like about your design, is we could see, I feel like we're in a thing where books are getting smaller, but you're still tackling full big games. And that probably helps with the quick turnaround, but also is, I think, knocking down a lot of barriers. But like I said, you're a rules person. You're a rules person who doesn't make tomes of rules, but you make just enough rules to still be able to do a full whatever the intention is. So could you talk about that a little bit, of how books are shrinking, but still able to do just as much, if not more, than the tomes we have?
I've been talking to a few people about that. What I've been realizing lately for myself is that I'm not trying to make somebody's forever game. I'm not trying to make the game that this group is going to glom onto, and they're going to just play that campaign for years and years and years, because there's already 2 or 3 of them that are already dominating the market in that, and I'm not going to try and take them down. My goal is to be somebody's like one-time game that they had a ridiculously good time and went, hey, maybe I want another ridiculously good time in a different flavor. And so for me, it's been really freeing to think about designing games that are going to be experienced as one-shots, or like somebody used the phrase few shots recently, which I really like. So like 2 to 3 session campaign, and then you've told a really satisfying story, you've had a great experience. And as I'm getting older, I also have, it's hard for me to schedule game time in general. So like trying to have a weekly 4-hour session is just not going to happen for me anymore. But if we're hanging out once a month and we've got a really cool experience we're having that month, that's way more valuable to me. So like a lot of us are designing with that in mind of like, well, what do I want to play with the capacity of time and energy that I have? And so I think that's why you're seeing these sort of smaller, very streamlined experiences.
And I think that's, saying you started in board games, it sort of makes sense. To me, that feels like a bit of a board game philosophy that works with this, is we're getting together for a really fun night. We don't have to play this board game the next 10 years, but we still love this board game type of thing. So that's kind of cool. And then,
I thought about that way. Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah, and I know you've taken a lot of your inspiration from video games, and shooters, like Destiny, which on the surface, at least to me, I was like, that seems like almost the hardest mechanic to translate, the feeling of a shooter, but you tackled it, and I think you were very successful in it.
Thank you.
So what made you go from what made you want to do this version of a video game, essentially?
The real origin story of it was early on when I was playing mostly like Powered by the Apocalypse role-playing games, or Blades in the Dark with friends, and I was describing to my cousin, my cousin's a very good friend of mine, we play a ridiculous amount of Destiny together, and my cousin had never played a role-playing game. I was trying to describe them to him because I thought he would really enjoy it, but he's like, no, that sounds like there's too much involved. And I was like, I'm going to make a game that you will connect with that won't feel too heavy. And so I made Light, and Light was originally just a one-page role-playing game. It just fit all on one sheet of paper, and it was me trying to distill this thing that he and I love, Destiny, onto a page with a rule system that he would be able to immediately grab onto. And after I did that, I went, oh, I think I can do more with this. I think this like suddenly unlocked something in my brain where I just went, oh, I had a really fun time trying to find a way to translate this thing that I do on a screen to now being able to share it at the table with maybe people who would have never tried that before.
Did it work with your cousin?
It did.
There you
work.
go.
Yeah,
You said if this guy gets it, everyone
exactly.
can.
If that works, then I think this might open the doors for some other people as well.
Awesome. And I think something you've honed in on, and another sort of change, a really exciting thing I think happening in the industry, is that there's an emphasis more on like art and what I'm calling like vibes.
Yeah.
Like you almost sell like, this is kind of the experience you're gonna get, this is the setting, this is the feel, really cool art, and then a lot of people are like, I just want to play around with that. I'll pick up the mechanics however they're presented to me. Where it feels like it used to be, you're buying rule books, and then it was encouraged to everyone else, you come up with a story. And I think there's kind of a flip of that, which I think is really neat, and something I think you're really leaning into.
Yeah, absolutely, right? Like, for me, as a GM, I'm a virtually zero prep GM. I don't like to prep very much anymore. I used to do hours of prep, and that was my lonely fun, but nowadays it's like 3 bullet points and let's go. And if your book is just giving vibe through the art and just little flavor text, then I think that's enough for a GM to just be able to kind of have a blurry picture of what's going on, and then they're focusing the camera, they're filling in the holes together with the table, which is another thing that I think is really important, is doing this game together as a group rather than a GM who learns all these rules and has these very strict ways of running the game, kind of excludes the players from that process. But I started playing role-playing games with my brother and his friends, and they're all improvisers in Chicago, so they don't play that way where I tell the story. They say, no, we're doing this together. And so I think that's really important for me, is to just give their suggestions, right? Like in an improv show, you get suggestions from the audience and then you just roll with it. And that's what we're kind of going for.
I think that's another really big barrier that used to be there. I think it's a lot easier to pitch a game too, where they're not sure if they're into ttrpgs, it's easy to explain a hunt real quick, and they're like, okay, yeah, where if you explain something else, depending on who you talk to, say, what's your game, they'll start explaining the system to you.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's certain people, sure, but I was like, most people, especially outside of people who already play, are just going to glaze over.
Right. Well, here's the general experience you're going to get, and if you know you're going to get that experience in something this size, you're way more willing to pick it up and try it than a tome that big. And I started talking to you about dice modifiers and stuff like that. My brain checks out on that.
That's another thing I want to get into. Another thing you're just doing your own way is not necessarily dice.
Yeah, get rid of them.
Yeah, and I saw your tweet about cards, which is something I've been messing around with.
Oh,
so
nice.
what's the idea of what got you away from dice, and what's appealing about other options?
Yeah, so what got me away from dice was I actually recently was playing light with some friends, and while I like my system, there were some times where dice rolling was happening, and it creates these sort of hurdles, either in like dice dictating success in situations where like it feels like we should roll, but like how are we going to interpret a complication, or like I ultimately found that I didn't find dice to be a satisfying way to dictate whether or not people were good at what they should be good at. Like, we're good at things and we should be capable of doing a lot of things. And what more likely dictates our failure at things is our state of mind or our state of body. As we wear ourselves down, we get worse at tasks. And so, to me, the concept of like resource management as the mode of dictating success is way more interesting than chance and randomness saying you're good at it or you're not good at it in this very specific situation. And again, that also came from that origin of playing it with improvisers who really didn't like the idea that a dice roll suddenly said that the thing that they just said wasn't true. They're like, that's not how this works. You're supposed to yes and me.
Dice haven't yes and me once.
Right, and like when I think about that, and I think about my experiences with rolling dice, and I just go, I think we can do this faster. And then again, faster is an important thing too. I like sessions that can be done in 90 minutes, 2 hours max. And if we're doing a lot of dice rolling and interpretation, that slows it down. But if it's more like, here's what I'm doing, okay, I'm just marking down my characters slowly draining away. Am I gonna make it to the 90-minute mark? That's a more interesting point of conflict to me than what does chance say for me right now?
And I think your books reflect that as well. As what you said is like, I'm good at things, let me be good at things. A lot of your books are like, hey, you're awesome, you're a badass. We want to give you a little bit of that power fantasy, but narratively, rather than my numbers are so good, that doesn't feel as cool as like, no, the pitch of the game is you're badasses, but here's a little something to still throw a wrench in that.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right, we could do fly. I love this stuff, but you did a thing. You did a really good thing. You made Hunt. Do you want to get into Hunt a little bit?
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, so what's the idea of Hunt? What's your Hunt pitch?
Hunt is a one-shot game, so you play it in one session. It's about a story of cursed knights. Your knightly order has been cursed by something, you're not sure what. And you go and break into your vault, wield apocalyptic weapons, wander into a forest that really doesn't want you to be there, and try and hunt down a beast. And it's all diceless, so you're not going to use any dice to kind of dictate the flow of the story. And you watch these knights really get challenged as they move their way to the forest, and then the game ends with a big climactic fight against the beast. And maybe you succeed or maybe you don't.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this. I think we'll have more on this around our channel for sure.
Awesome.
And then you also have Reap coming out.
Yeah, that's launching on the Tuesday after Gen Con. So like, I'm giving myself no time to rest.
It's the curse, right?
Yeah, exactly. So
and that's a solo.
Yeah, so that's it's me taking the rune system that I made, which is my Souls-like solo RPG, and just filling it with necromancy. I love necromancy. I think it's really cool, and so I've tweaked some rules a little bit to rune so that now it's about ripping the blood and bone and body from your enemies as you take them down and enhancing your spells with it. It's gonna feel a little bit more, if you're familiar with my other stuff where you definitely have a power fantasy vibe, you're gonna get a little bit more of that than in Rune where you were kind of just getting your ass kicked again and again because it was Dark Souls where that exactly happened.
And Dark Souls prove people love getting their ass kicked again and again. Who knew? Awesome. Well, this has been great. Any other things you're excited about, whether in your projects or like some stuff you've seen other people do that just you're like, oh, this seems cool, or just the industry in general, something that you're looking forward to?
Things that I want to shout out real quick. CBR PNK just recently got like sent out to backers. You can find it here at Gen Con. It's the coolest looking box for an RPG that I've ever seen in my whole life. The whole thing is produced in pamphlets that are put together in a really sleek package, and I think it's pushing what, like, books are cool, but now that I can have like a little box full of dedicated pamphlets of different rules, that it makes it very modular, was like mind-blowing to me when I saw that. So that just got released into the wild. So people should look up CBR plus PNK. It's amazing. And then also here, and a good friend of mine, Charlie Ferguson Avery, Alex Cogan released Into the Cess and Citadel, and it won a Silver Ennie for best setting, I think it was, or supplement, and it's so good. So people should look at that because it's great.
Awesome. And where, if they wanted to find you and your wares, where you would want to send them?
I'm everywhere on the internet, all the new social media platforms, everything like that, as GilaRPGs, GilaRPGs. And you can find me, that's my website, that's my Twitter handle, it's Twitch, it's my itch handle, everywhere. So, yeah.
There you go. You're tackling it all. All right, there's a lot more we get into, but you're also, you got a job to do. We're going to let you do that. So this has been great. Thank you so much. And that's it for us. Bye.